I originally planned to do a video about how Beerus was a great character in Battle of Gods and had been handled poorly in all of his appearances ever since that film, but someone else did that recently, so I'll either cancel the video altogether or put it on hold. Ironically, some of what was going to be discussed in that video has been recycled for this one. Ever since Super began, especially after Battle of Gods, it seems like the only two characters who are allowed to have massive gains in power over the course of the series are Goku and Vegeta. This really annoys me because it renders most of the cast unable to assist in battles and is a large factor in why I dislike Super. A lot of people excuse Goku's power as being plot armor that he needs to have as the main character and claim that this has always been the case. What many seem to forget is that in both the original Dragon Ball and Z, there were explanations given for his massive increases in power that put him above the rest of the cast. In the King Piccolo saga, Goku was given a power boost from drinking the sacred water. In the Piccolo Jr. saga, Goku was the only character to train with Kami for 3 years, and in the Saiyan saga, Goku was the only character who trained with King Kai. The inference in each of these instances was that if a character had drank the sacred water or trained with Kami or King Kai like Goku did, they could be equal or at least close to the level of power Goku had obtained. In Super, this isn't the case. Instead, Goku and Vegeta train with the exact same people, with the exception of the ongoing Moro arc, and Goku is always stronger because reasons. We want him to be stronger because he's the lead, and if you at the very least want an explanation for this, to hell with you. Vegeta's a bit of a different story. He's given a bunch of new forms, more screen time than the rest of the cast, but it's largely to play second fiddle. Some will say that the same thing happened to Vegeta and Z, but we never saw Vegeta and Goku train together during that series, meaning that now they train together all the time. And we're supposed to believe Goku just magically keeps being stronger to such an extent that he's uniquely equipped to be the one always closest to defeating the main antagonist. But let's discuss what negatives come out of the massive power gap between Goku, Vegeta, and the rest of the cast. In Battle of Gods, Goku and Vegeta are shown to be the only two characters that can actually harm Beerus, Vegeta only doing this when he's enraged. In Resurrection F, it is very apparent that both Vegeta and Goku can defeat Golden Form Frieza, while the rest of the Z fighters cannot. In the Galactic Patrol Prisoner arc, after Moro and his henchmen invade Earth, Goku and Vegeta are shown to be the only two characters that can engage Moro one-on-one and stand a chance at beating him. This means that the entire series has been Goku, Vegeta, and sometimes a third or fourth character being capable of at least fighting the main villain while the rest of the cast sits around hoping they'll turn up. This also means that whenever Goku and Vegeta aren't around, the stakes are heightened due to the two characters you can always count on to be at least strong enough to challenge the main antagonist not being around. This also means that whenever they show up, I'm not going to be as invested in the story because I know the same formula is going to repeat itself. And let me define what I mean by the same formula. In every single arc of Super, Goku and Vegeta receive either the most screen time of any character, or they get the most along with another character. This was the case in Battle of Gods, Resurrection F, Universe 6, and the Moro arc. The only slight deviations were during the Future Trunks arc, where Future Trunks got to be a main character, and the Tournament of Power, where Gohan, Frieza, and Android 17 all received large doses of screen time at various points. Yes, Goku does not defeat Beerus, merge Zamasu, or Jiren, but he still comes the closest of any protagonist to defeating them. He also defeats Golden Frieza and Hit, so out of the 5 main villains of the 5 arcs of the Super anime, Goku either outright defeats them or comes the closest of anyone. This is why I don't have to read the rest of the Moro arc, because I know that either Goku will defeat Moro or some higher deity will save the day, like Zeno did against Zamasu. This series has become so predictable due to its insistence on sucking off the same two characters in almost the exact same ways every season. There are some people who defend this choice by saying that if you give other characters more power, then it erases the gains made by Goku and Vegeta throughout Super. While I can see that, you have to remember that much of their power was obtained over several arcs. As much as I think Super didn't know what to do with most of the characters, it did at least devote arcs to developing Goku and Vegeta, giving them new transformations, different characters to interact with, etc. But I then ask, why can't the same be done with the rest of the cast? Why can't we have 3 arcs that develop Piccolo, for example, from being much behind Goku and Vegeta in power to being able to keep up with them? Have one arc where he's training with Beerus, who handicaps himself, then with Beerus using half his power, and then with Beerus and Whis. That way, a slow progression could be shown that when it materializes in Piccolo either getting a new form or defeating a main villain for once, it would have been foreshadowed for multiple years leading up to that. This could have been done. The writers just chose not to. There are people who theorize on Super's obsession with Goku and Vegeta, and a lot of them point to marketing. This really annoys me because I highly doubt that if Gohan, for example, was made to receive a similar power to Goku and Vegeta and defeat a main villain one time, people would stop buying Dragon Ball merchandise. I highly doubt that if Krillin was made to receive a similar power to Goku and Vegeta and defeat a main villain one time, people would stop buying Dragon Ball merchandise. But even if they did, doesn't that mean there's a weakness within the writers, that they are less willing to tell a good story if it means a couple of people might get upset over one variance? That's not good storytelling. That's the coward's way out. There are some people who defend this obsession by claiming that they cannot focus on all of the characters, which no one is asking for. This was actually done to me when I mentioned the roster for fighters, and I spoke of wanting maybe 10, 20 more characters, and I was told about how I wanted over 100, like all the past games. So people hear your point, but then ignore what you actually want. They scapegoat you, basically. When the Tournament of Power was announced, we had an expectation of the 10 Universe 7 participants getting focused on, which in my opinion did not happen. However, if you can't focus on 10 characters in 50 episodes, you're a bad writer. I gave the movies credit for being strapped for time and thus not being able to develop more than a few characters at a time, the same ones over and over again, but that's not an excuse for an entire show. Another defense people have put forward is that this is how it has always been. What I find very disturbing is that the same group who want it to remain this way, whatever that means, are the same ones praising Super for taking Dragon Ball in new directions with the introduction of the gods and other universes. I've even seen some people who are hoping for the series to remain about just Goku and Vegeta and have them meet new characters. I've got news for you. If they're treating the older characters poorly compared to how they treat Goku and Vegeta, then they are going to do the exact same thing to the new characters if they're around long enough. Out of the 12 gods of destruction, minus Beerus, what did any of them do in Super other than stand around? Of the 12 attendants, minus Whis, what did any of them do other than stand around? Exactly. If franchise mainstays like Krillin, Piccolo, and Gohan get very little to do, the new characters like the gods are going to get nothing to do. I also need to clarify before I wrap this up that I don't have a problem with Goku and Vegeta, at least a problem that could be solved with removing them from the story. There are some people who have tried to lump me in with those that have called for a focus on next generation characters like Ooh, Pan, and Bra, all of whom I find very boring. I would much prefer if there was an arc centered around a character that was largely ignored by Super, like Tien or Boo or Android 18, where Goku and Vegeta are there, but they play a secondary role compared to the lead character of the arc. This was actually done to an extent during the lead up to the Tournament of Power, where Gohan was receiving more screen time than Vegeta. So the writers can do this, they just choose not to. So I think Super would have been more interesting if they used the other characters regularly, besides Goku and Vegeta, and actually allowed the other members of the cast to catch up in terms of power over the course of the story. I'm aware there are many people who like Super and its character usage, but I'm not one of them. In the 5 years of the manga and the 2.5 years of the show, I found myself very tired of watching the same formula largely being repeated with seldom variants. This is why the only arc of Super I would go back and watch for fun would be the Tournament of Power, because at least it tries to use some of the show's cast. The rest of the series, if I wanted to see Goku and Vegeta that much, I would just get a tattoo of them on my right hand.